in back.
Even though you're quite close to each other, we're only 5 yards apart, you have no idea what the person next to you is doing. So, you know, I suppose it would be theoretically possible to go through a whole war and never shoot at anybody, because, frankly, people have got better things to do than look at what their buddies are doing.
But I do still think there must be a flaw in the data.
Personally, if I'm being shot at, I'll be shooting at the person doing it. I don't want to go home with one bollock, do I?
And at tea time, I got the chance to ask my comrades in arms if they felt the same.
So if there was a war, you guys have obviously taken a slight interest in the military because you're here. Have you always felt growing up that you'd be able to do your bit, or would you be hiding in a cellar somewhere?
I think I'd always want to do my bit.
You do your bit, I think, wouldn't you?
And do you think you'd be able to shoot somebody?
We'll find out.
If that had been a real person you were aiming a gun at, and you've been ordered to do it, do you think you'd be able to do it?
Yeah,
so do I.
Why not?
Our confidence was misplaced. After basic training, our instructors wanted to see how we'd react under pressure. They ambushed us with stun grenades and smoke bombs. Soon the machine gun pellets were flying at us, and the result wasn't pretty.
Delta 3-4, prepare to move! It suddenly kicked off. There are two guys in berets just behind that fence over there, and they're firing at us, and we're firing at them. To be honest, I'm beginning to see why a lot of people miss. My helmet slipped over my eyes. I'm just firing in the general. I'm not aiming. It's not like you were with the target. There's a general sort of trouser browning motion which can really seriously affect your aim.
Despite the confusion, when the order came to charge, we all went for it, after a fashion. And I'm glad to say we all pulled the trigger.
Section leader! Reorg here! 2 enemy dead! Now! Get in there! Get in there! If I'm in the middle of a firefight and I don't have ammunition, and I happen to have lost my bloody bayonet, I'll get my spoon out and I will still kill somebody! Right? Get in there and start killing the enemy!
Understandably, after only a few hours, we were not the greatest soldiers in the world.
We are the shittest army.
Your levels of aggression.
Captain Hurricane, Corporal Twat.
Yeah, you hear anybody coming and they ain't...
It didn't seem to me, at least, that chaos was enough of a reason not to fire at the enemy. However, things were about to get harder. We would be fighting elite soldiers in a 12-hour night battle.
How many people usually survive?
No one, especially not you. Oh, shit, sorry.
And sure enough, when night fell, panic and fear escalated to a whole new level. Was this the reason why men in battle refused to kill?
Right, OK, gents. You've been sent on this mission, all right, with your buddies, to search this whole wood, all right, and to find the enemy.
In order to investigate US Army research, which found that only 2% of soldiers really shoot to kill, I decided to get a taste of battle. Along with 10 other volunteers from Civvy Street, I was being taught the basics of combat by some elite forces personnel. As we embarked on a 12-hour night exercise, the cold and hunger started to bite. Back in 1947, the military had wondered if their low rates of firing could be attributed to physical factors like these.
Andy, can't see you. Down! I'm not just losing the will to kill, I'm losing the will to live.
Enemy right!
The military have long known that the privations of soldiering can wear a man down. Lack of sleep coupled with fear can induce hallucinations, the shakes and heart palpitations. Even though we weren't using real bullets, 5 minutes of ambush and night fighting in the woods was enough for my body to start sending out its own distress signals.
That is a whole different league. Jesus. It really is...
It's now getting...
You feel like a cold sweat now, yeah. Jesus, it is like a cold sweat like you get when you're watching a horror movie.
And of course, since war began, soldiers have had to endure another infamous side effect.
A shell landed behind us, and the sergeant next to me said, "Shit," and shit some more. I asked him if he was hit, and he sort of smiled and said no, he had just pissed his pants. He always pissed them, he said, just when things started, and then he was okay. All of a sudden I realized something warm was running down my leg. I felt, and it wasn't blood. It was piss. I told Sarge, I said, "Sarge, I've pissed too," and he grinned and he said, "Welcome to the war."
In fact, although understandably few are willing to talk about it in public, army doctors find that up to a quarter of all soldiers will piss or crap themselves during battle.
They're scared. They won't look up over the foxhole. They're peeing their pants. Some are defecating. Some are vomiting. And everyone is shivering and shaking.
Getting the shakes, shitting your trousers. To the man in the street, this sounds like a handy definition of fear. So could it be that our soldiers were simply too frightened to fire? One man who's had more than his fair share of battlefield fear is former British para Denzil Connick. He was involved in the fierce firefight for Mount Longdon in the Falklands War.
When the crap started to fly, when the bullets were being fired at us as we were going onto this position to take this hillside, and men were beginning to die, that was totally terrifying. I can't think of anything that was much more terrifying than that. You felt scared, but at the same time quite determined to see it through. Your legs felt heavy. You felt really as if you just wanted to curl up and get away from this bedlam, this lunacy that you were willingly going into.
For the next part of our battle experience, our Special Forces instructors thrust us into Fibua, or fighting in a built-up area. We were to assault a building occupied by an unknown number of hostiles. As we edged up to the target, I expected to see the enemy round every corner. Fear breeds paranoia, and even in our simulation, I was feeling it.
No, it's not! You got a target there! Who's behind you? Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out!
I was just not aware of anything except my eyes and the end of the gun. It was almost like a computer game. It was as if I'd gone into brain freeze. It's like when you see a really pretty girl and you can walk down the street and crash into a lamppost. It was like the dilation of time. It actually felt like one long second. You know, I had no sensation of anything apart from a big voice in my head saying, "You're fucking this up." And then I came out, I thought I'd finished and some bloke killed me with a machine gun. It's not going to go down with, Waterloo and Blenheim as one of England's greatest ever victories, I've got to tell you.
While I'd been scared during the night exercise, I'd also been excited. The adrenaline was flowing. But crucially, something had happened in my head, and perhaps it was something like this, something more complicated than just raw fear, which was stopping soldiers 60 years ago from shooting the enemy.
It was only when the military looked in detail at battle stress that an important clue was found. They noticed that frontline soldiers were suffering some bizarre side effects. In the American Civil War, soldiers reported paralysis, but only in the hand that fired their weapon. Similarly, German troops suffered from frostbite, but only in their trigger finger. The key was that these illnesses were not about trying to get away from the battlefield. Any disease from dysentery to foot rot would have done that. These were real physical symptoms of a deep-seated psychological reluctance to kill.
Look at the X right in his belly there. One right there. Put another one in there. Put another. You're too slow. Do it again. You're too slow. Do it again. All right. I have no doubt that you've hit the target.
I'm just going to wander down.
Lieutenant Colonel Grossman has been studying the problem of non-firers for the last 10 years. According to him, the real horrors of conflict don't happen on the beachheads or in the trenches, but deep inside the human brain. Something at the very essence of their being was stopping our troops from taking life.
The data is solid. Number one, they could do it if they wanted to. Number two, they didn't. So, what conclusion have we got?
Something is going on in the head of our soldiers.
Yeah, something's wrong.
To understand what's wrong, we have to look at how